I'm going to bring to you an article you can find for free on jstor.org, and it's by Samantha Bradshaw, Philip N. Howard, entitled The Global Organization of Social Media Disinformation Campaigns. Social media has emerged as a powerful tool for political engagement and expression. However, state actors are increasingly leveraging these platforms to spread computational propaganda and disinformation during critical moments of public life. These actions serve to nudge public opinion, set political or media agendas, censor freedom of speech, or control the flow of information online. Drawing on data collected from the Computational Propaganda Project's 2017 investigation into the global organization of social media manipulation, we examine how governments and political parties around the world are using social media to shape public attitudes, opinions, and discourses at home and abroad. We demonstrate the global nature of this phenomenon, comparatively assessing the organizational capacity and form these actors assume, and discuss the consequences for the future of power and democracy. The manipulation of public opinion via social media platforms has emerged as a critical issue facing contemporary digital society. There are many dimensions to this problem. Junk news is spreading like wildfire via social media platforms during key episodes in public life. Bots are amplifying opinions at the fringe of the political spectrum. Nationalistic trolls are harassing individuals to suppress speech online. The financial model that supports high-quality news and journalism is facing increasing competition from social media advertising, strategic data leaks, targeting political campaigns, are undermining the credibility of world leaders and democratic institutions, and the lack of transparency around how social media firms operate is making regulatory interventions difficult. Evidence is beginning to illuminate the global impact of the darker side of political communication, including disinformation campaigns, negative campaigning, and information operations. Governments and political parties around the world are spending significant resources to generate content, direct public attention, and manipulate the opinion of foreign and domestic audiences via social media. These cyber troops are state-sponsored organizations tasked with conducting disinformation campaigns on the internet. So they're state-sponsored organizations tasked with conducting disinformation campaigns on the internet. Disinformation takes many forms, but cyber troop activity involves the purposeful distribution of fake, misleading, fabricated, or manipulated content, such as what I've been finding on AI when I Google a question. These actors rely on computational propaganda, the use of automation, algorithms, and big data analytics to influence or deceive social media users. Unlike lone wolf coders, hacker collectives, or non-state actors who also use social media to express speech or achieve political goals, cyber troops are publicly funded and often highly coordinated government actors who use social media to spread disinformation and attempt to generate false consensus. These strategies erode the quality of democracy by undermining trust in leaders, media, institutions, in addition to serving as another tool to restrict freedom of expression in repressive regimes. This paper discusses the global organization of social media disinformation and compares government actors across regime types. Drawing on data collected from the Computational Propaganda Project's 2017 investigation into the global organization of social media manipulation, we examine how governments and political parties around the world are using social media as a tool of information warfare on both domestic and foreign audiences. We highlight the broad trends of this phenomenon, drawing conclusions about the form, organization, and capacity these institutions assume. Power and counterpower, technology and the state. The study of technology and information has been central to the domain of international studies. Scholars have dedicated significant resources to understand how technology disrupts power and politics, enhances or constrains human rights, reorganizes political interactions and institutions, and elevates cyberspace as a new domain of conflict. Much of the literature assumes that low barriers to entry and reduced communication costs afforded by technology have altered the balance of power in favor of minor political players. This assumption informs a wave of research that has explored issues such as terrorist recruitment and coordination online, the disruptive power of marginal social movements, and independent coder and hacker collectives performing discursive political actions. Indeed, many singular and small-scale actors have achieved impressive political gains by using the internet to catch authoritarian elites off guard during the Arab Spring. At a high level, one component of scholarship on technology, power, and counterpower research has tended to focus on 1. The growing role and capacity of non-state actors, 2. Cases that are regionally specific or limited in scope, or 3. Cases that are serendipitous in success. While there is a growing body of important research on these modular phenomena, there is no reason we should expect that transferring norms of technology use should only involve social movements and democracy advocates. Many kinds of political actors across geographic borders and regime types can learn how to adapt technology to implement digital solutions to support their own public interests or goals. Indeed, many authoritarian regimes have successfully leveraged the internet and social media technologies to exert further control and censorship of freedom and information. In addition, states, sometimes viewed as disadvantaged by the shift in communication power, can learn to exploit social media architecture to reassert control and sovereignty in cyberspace. With increasing evidence of Russian involvement in the United Kingdom's Brexit referendum and interference with the 2016 United States election, social media manipulation is clearly a powerful tool for political influence. Previously, most public concern and academic inquiries into cyber power had been preoccupied with the hard power capabilities that affect both the digital and real-world domains, such as cybercrime and data theft, attacks that damage critical infrastructure, or online surveillance. During the past 5 years, international affairs have become saturated with examples of governments leveraging social media to manipulate public opinion, assigning personnel and financial resources to disinformation and propaganda campaigns online. These campaigns tend to employ what scholars have referred to as soft power and persuasion, framing and agenda setting, ideological hegemony, symbolic power, or sharp power to achieve desired outcomes. This emerging domain of inquiry should be central to the field of international studies, as it provides an opportunity to expand and refine the concept and exercise of cyber power and acts as a countervailing example of state power in the digital age. The organization of social media manipulation. This section draws on the Computational Propaganda Project's 2017 investigation into state-sponsored social media manipulation, which presented an investigation of the political economy and organizational behavior of global cyber troops in 28 countries. These countries included Argentina, Australia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Brazil, China, Czech Republic, Ecuador, Germany, India, Iran, Mexico, North Korea, Philippines, Poland, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Serbia, South Korea, Syria, Taiwan, Turkey, Ukraine, and the United Kingdom and the United States, Venezuela, and Vietnam. The inventory captured various actors across many regime types that used disinformation campaigns on social media in an attempt to influence public opinion. It relied on open source information such as news reports, academic and think tank studies, and publicly available government documents, combined with expert consultations, to publish a country-by-country report of government-sponsored social media disinformation campaigns worldwide. While national contexts are always important to consider, we suggest it is worth trying to generalize about the experience of organized disinformation campaigns by regime type to develop a broad comparative understanding of this phenomenon. Table 1 highlights 4 key trends in the capacity, organization, form, and targets that disinformation campaigns take on across regime type. So you can see the graph, regime type, country studied. It has all the countries, model actors, level of formal organization, level of capacity, model targets. I'm just going to look at that, and then I'm going to move on to the next. I'll read Table 1, a comparative redux of government capacity for social media manipulation around the world. Source: authors calculated based on data collected from Bradshaw and Howard. Modal actors. Column 1, modal actor types, presents the modal actor active across the regime types. For each country, we sought evidence that government agencies and political parties were employing computational propaganda, either through their own capacities or working alongside civil society groups, private citizens, or independent contractors. Based on the data we collected the modal actor present in each regime by counting the number of actors identified in each case. In authoritarian regimes, the modal actor types are government ministries. These include cyber troops who work for Vietnam's Ministry of Education and the Internet Research Agency in Russia. Most of the authoritarian states in our sample, Bahrain, China, Iran, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and Vietnam, had a government organization responsible for disinformation campaigns. Often these organizations were part of a larger cybersecurity team tasked with securing cyber infrastructure and content, such as Bahrain's National Cyber Crime Unit or Iran's Supreme Council of Cyberspace. This finding fits into the broader work on censorship and repression by authoritarian regimes that leverage technology to exert control of cyberspace. In contrast, the modal actor types in democracies are political parties. We found evidence of political parties using computational propaganda in 12 of the 16 countries: Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Germany, India, Mexico, the Philippines, Poland, Serbia, Taiwan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. These actors would often target domestic audiences during elections or other important political events such as referenda. Level of formal organization. The second column presents the level of formality among cyber troop teams. Here we collected evidence on the organizational behavior of cyber troops, including coordination across teams, clear levels of hierarchy, and reward structures, such as evidence of performance bonuses or scholarships. We use a simple calculation to determine the level of formal organization by summing and averaging evidence of each variable across regime type. This column is based on a low, medium, high scale. A score of 1 to 3 represents a low-level organization, 3 to 7 is medium, and 7 or above is high. Authoritarian regimes have the highest level of formal organization, where teams often work in a structured environment with managers and reporting structures. Cyber troops are assigned daily or weekly tasks, such as making a certain number of posts or friendly real people. Staff will also receive formal training. In some cases, organizations award scholarships and other forms of recognition to encourage more online activity. This is unsurprising given the amount of control such regimes already exert over their populations. Democracies have a slightly lower degree of formal organization. This is in part because teams that work with political parties often form around the time of an election and dissolve when the campaign has ended. When coordination does occur, it is usually around military interventions that use tools of computational propaganda to combat terrorism or counter extremism online. These psychological operations, often carried out in a military setting, are more formally organized with major investments made in research and development. I might want to just scan over some of this. Level of capacity. The third column presents the capacity of cyber troop teams to conduct disinformation campaigns online. Different teams use different tools and techniques to manipulate public opinion, such as political bots, content creation, targeted advertisements, fake personas, and trolling or harassment. We collected evidence of the existence of these capacities in each regime type, then calculated the average number of tools found across regime types to determine the level of capacity. Democracies have the highest level of capacity to conduct disinformation campaigns. This is unsurprising. Much of the research and innovation in this area began in democratic military settings as defense organizations invested resources into understanding how ideas go viral on social media. Today, however, most of the innovation around tools and techniques occurs around election cycles, with political parties and strategic communication firms driving innovation. A common tool of democracies is the use of political bots, which amplify follower counts on social media and ensure certain stories or hashtags begin trending. In Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Germany, Ecuador, Mexico, the Philippines, Taiwan, the United Kingdom, and the United States, we found evidence of political parties using political bots to distort partisan conversations by generating high follower counts or amplifying certain hashtags or narratives over others. Although they are highly coordinated, authoritarian regimes have a slightly lower level of capacity for conducting disinformation campaigns, while there are a few authoritarian regimes that have invested significant funds and developed sophisticated tools for disseminating disinformation. Most authoritarian regimes rely on blunt tools to silence freedom of speech, including trolling, harassment, and targeting journalists or political dissidents with hate speech or threats. Indeed, trolling journalists has been recognized as a new and widespread threat to freedom of the press and freedom of expression around the world. In Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Russia, and Turkey, we found evidence of state-sponsored trolling behavior. Modal targets. Finally, modal targets present the most common target for coordinated disinformation campaigns. We collected evidence of various incidents where cyber troops were used to shape the public debate. Some incidents focused on domestic audiences, such as the use of computational propaganda as a tool of social control and censorship. Other incidents focused on foreign adversaries, such as foreign influence operations. We then organized this information by regime type to calculate the modal targets of each. Across all regime types, the modal target was domestic audiences in democracies. This tended to manifest as political parties using disinformation campaigns during elections. In authoritarian regimes, these campaigns act as another tool of censorship and repression. In only a few instances did we find cyber troops using disinformation campaigns in foreign audiences. Examples here include Russia targeting the United States as well as Baltic and European countries, and foreign operations between China and Taiwan, North and South Korea, and Israel and Palestine. Limitations. While the findings of this paper serve to inform a broader understanding of the global organization of social media manipulation There are several limitations to this methodology that should be considered. First, data about disinformation campaigns are spotty at best. Many of these activities occur in secretive military contexts or behind the proprietary walls of private actors. Thus, painting a complete picture of these activities online by government actors is extremely difficult, and there will be gaps in the data and cases collected. The cases we identified are in no way exhaustive as to the extent to which governments and political party actors use disinformation campaigns. Nevertheless, they are important to begin inventorying to start developing a broader understanding of this phenomenon and the implications for democracy. Second, the data collected for the analysis were based on open sources in the English language. While expert consultations were conducted to ensure the accuracy of data collected in non-English country-specific contexts, we only consulted individuals once we had identified a case of disinformation. Thus, there are many other cases that might have not been captured because of the language limitations. Finally, we use very simplistic measures to calculate the modal actor types, level of formal organization, level of capacity, and modal targets. Although a more rigorous model could be adopted with more data points, this simplistic model demonstrates a few important differences that are already emerging between regime types and how different actors use social media to manipulate public opinion. These insights are important for beginning to establish insights into this phenomenon and encourage further research on this topic. And it also encourages your awareness so that you can discern what's actually going on, what people are actually pushing, and how you want to form your own opinion and according to your own needs and what you see as being right. Conclusion: cyber troops invest significant funds and resources in an attempt to sway public opinion over social media. Increasingly, governments and political parties around the world are investing in the tools and techniques of computational propaganda in order to shape the outcomes of elections, disrupt diplomatic efforts, and undermine peace-building efforts. It is valuable to know this because it means investigators of such phenomena have bigger objects and subjects of study. But it also means that even the most traditional ways of analyzing the causes and consequences of modern peace, conflict, trade, diplomacy, and a myriad of other international processes must consider that political actors have a significant new tool for political communication and for disrupting the political signals of rival actors. By taking a global perspective on computational propaganda and the actors involved in spreading disinformation on social media, we can identify emerging trends and track the evolution of this phenomenon over time. It is clear that more stage actors are attempting to exploit social media to exercise power in the digital age. From 2017 to 18, the size of our sample has grown as more political parties and governments begin to experiment with the computational propaganda. Domestic and international affairs have become proliferated with examples of state actors using and abusing social media to achieve political goals. These examples demonstrate the changing nature of cyber power and the addition of computational propaganda to the arsenal of cyber warfare. As innovation continues in areas such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, the Internet of Things, and big data analytics, the nature and strategy of computational propaganda will also evolve. Scholarship must understand how power is assumed and exercised through computational propaganda, and the consequences of this phenomenon for society and democracy. And there's the authors there. Anyway, I think that's really significant, and I hope that helps you to understand exactly the differences between the way our media is being controlled and used against us and weaponized. In this next section of information, I would like to show that what we just read has really been taken to the next level, and that the most influential of all of these types of governance is the authoritarian style government. And oh, by the way, you're going to hear lots of cars and dogs barking and hopefully crickets, but it's because I'm outside enjoying the last bit of sunshine for the season. So I hope to show here that authoritarian governance is the one that's on the rise and has been the most covert of all the disinformation campaigns that we just read about. I think there's a wealth of information that can prove that, and I will probably only barely touch on it here, but that's what we're going to do. So we're going to read this article from Brilliant Maps, Making Sense of the World, One Map at a Time. The Technate of America, a plan to replace partisan politicians and business people with scientists and engineers. And that would be the technocracy, which is an authoritarian style government in the most extreme form. So the map, okay, that's a map. We're not going to talk about those right now, but that does show, actually, let's just look at that. This map is back when the technocracy started. It shows where the goal was to have a technate of America, and that would be an authoritarian type of government that was proposed in 1940 through the help of Howard Scott, who fathered that movement, the technocracy movement. Okay, that introduction, let's read this. This was basically a plan to run all of North America and some of South America by scientists and engineers rather than partisan politicians and business people. Interestingly, Joshua N. Haldeman, Elon Musk's maternal grandfather, was a supporter of the plan between 1936 to 1941. Here's a summary of technocracy movement itself. Now, we aren't going to read that, but you can just Google technocracy movement and read it on Wikipedia and get a a biased approach to it, but it does give you a wealth of information on that. And there's just a lot of things that they're all going to be holding back here that we've seen on a lot of other things that we're going to probably address as we go. Okay, the technocracy movement emerged primarily in the United States and Canada in the 1930s, advocating the replacement of representative democracy and traditional economic systems with governance by scientific and technical experts. Its proponents argued that politics and economic decisions should be managed by engineers and scientists, believing this approach would result in a more rational, efficient, and productive society. Technocrats believed that politics, partisan struggles, and monetary systems hindered rational social management. Origins and early development. The term technocracy, coined in 1919 by engineer William H. Smith, referred to governance through technical and scientific expertise rather than elected politicians or business people. So, yeah, maybe this is the actual father of technocracy, but nonetheless, Scott was also considered that. I think all of these guys are just, not necessarily coming up with these ideas on their own. They're just, it's completely a team effort. So let's see. Thorstein Veblen's writings, particularly The Engineers and the Price System, significantly influenced the intellectual foundation of the movement. Other early inspirations included Edward Bellamy's utopian visions and the progressive engineers of the early 20th century. Early organizations such as Henry Gantt's The New Machine and Veblen's Soviet of Technicians experimented briefly with technocratic ideas but dissolved rapidly. So the formation and prominent figures. Howard Scott became the movement's most notable figure, establishing the Technical Alliance in 1919 and later Technocracy Incorporated in 1933. After factional splits, Scott and his associates believed that only engineers and scientists could efficiently manage industrial economies. The movement rapidly gained public attention during the Great Depression, when traditional political systems struggled to address the economic crisis. Core ideology and proposals. Technocrats asserted that traditional monetary economies, referred to as price systems, were inherently flawed because they created artificial scarcity. Instead, they proposed energy accounting, a radical new economic model that used energy rather than currency as a measurement of value. Citizens would receive energy certificates, later energy distribution cards, entitling them to an equal share of resources based on energy allotments rather than money. Certificates would expire, preventing hoarding and ensure continuous scientifically managed consumption. The core vision was continental in scope, proposing a technate spanning from Panama to the North Pole, exploiting abundant natural resources and geography to achieve self-sustainability. Decline and challenges. The movement's popularity peaked briefly between 1932 and 1933, but quickly declined partly due to skepticism about its feasibility and internal factionalism, or else people just weren't ready to be completely controlled yet. Howard Scott's 1933 nationwide radio address was poorly received, damaging public perception. Critics argued technocracy's Incorporated's ideas were overly elitist, dismissive of democracy, and politically naive, especially as predictions of imminent economic collapse did not materialize. During World War II, the movement faced temporary suppression in Canada, later cooperating with the war effort. Post-war activity, however, dwindled significantly due to internal dissent, public skepticism, and the stabilization of traditional economic systems. Key elements of technocracy's proposal. Technocracy Incorporated proposed significant societal reforms. I would say they're very significant. Energy theory of value. Number one, society would abandon monetary valuation, adopting energy as the fundamental economic measure. Economic transactions would be tracked through energy accounting, making monetary systems obsolete. Number two, abolition of partisan politics and price system, elimination of traditional financial systems, bankers, politicians, and business people, replacing them entirely with technical experts. Number three, scientific social engineering. Society's problems would be treated purely as engineering challenges, resolved by the all-knowing technical solutions rather than legislation. An example was redesigning streetcars without dangerous outer platforms instead of legislating passenger behavior. Number four, continuous efficient work scheduling. Technocrats designed a 4-hour-a-day work week rotating among 7 groups to ensure 24-hour productivity without interruptions, optimizing the use of resources, machinery, and infrastructure. Number 5, energy-based continental accounting system. A detailed continent-wide inventory system would track real-time energy conversion, availability, and usage, ensuring scientifically balanced resource distribution. Organization and aesthetics. Technocracy Incorporated members wore distinctive gray uniforms with monad insignias symbolizing balanced production and consumption. That monad looks just like the yin-yang, but it's red and white. Gray became the official color, signifying uniformity and efficiency. Publications often used industrial imagery and robots as visual metaphors, suggesting society managed by impartial, rational, technical control rather than human emotions, God forbid, or politics. Influence and legacy. Although the movement lost prominence after the mid-20th century, its influence persisted culturally. Technocracy found representation in literature, games, and popular media. Very popular media. Literature, technocratic ideas inspired works by none other than Aldous Huxley of Brave New World, H.G. Wells' The Shape of Things to Come, and were indirectly referenced in science fiction by authors like Isaac Asimov. Video games such as Stellaris, Victoria 3, and Hearts of Iron 4. Modifications incorporated technocratic governments, energy-based currencies, and organizational methods, reflective of Technocracy Incorporated's original visions. I've seen a lot of ads for some games and audiobooks that include all of those things. So there's way more on the media platforms that support and push this authoritarian style of government. Comparison to socialism. Technocracy, while sometimes conflated with socialism due to critiques of capitalism, fundamentally differed from socialist ideologies. Socialists advocated worker democracy and egalitarian political participation. Technocracy, by contrast, rejected traditional politics entirely, entrusting societal control exclusively to technical experts, viewed as inherently elitist. Howard Scott provocatively declared technocracy to be even more radically egalitarian, far left than communism, yet differed fundamentally by its outright rejection of political structures, whether democratic or revolutionary. Legacy and modern status. Technocracy Incorporated persisted into the 21st century, maintaining small-scale activities, newsletters. Small-scale? I doubt it. And websites which you can still access. Of course you can. An archive of Technocracy's historical materials is preserved at the University of Alberta, documenting its cultural and historical influence. And here's what Cornell Library says about the map itself. This map illustrates the American Technate, a radical geopolitical proposal by a radical organization based on pseudo-scientific economics and authoritarian nationalist politics. As the Great Depression deepened in the early 1930s, Americans looked in desperation to a variety of radical social and political solutions. One of the most popular was technocracy, which offered a seemingly scientific explanation of America's ills, quote unquote. Namely, the disastrous inefficiency of the wage price system, the very heart of capitalism, all in quotes. The technocrats proposed abandoning business and representative government as the driving forces of our economy and replacing them with massive social engineering centered on technicians, especially engineers, as the efficient, scientific, anti-capitalistic elite capable of reorienting the economic order around rational production and distribution. Theirs was a clarion call for technicians to plan and engineer the new order. Ooh, who said that? Aiken, 1977. And that's a quote, technicians, especially engineers, as the efficient, scientific, anti-capitalistic elite capable of reorienting the economic order around national production and distribution. Theirs was a clarion call for technicians to plan and engineer the new order, unquote. Now that was just to clarify that all of that was in quotes by Aiken. And I don't know who exactly that is, so we'll find out. All right, quote, politically unbiased experts in red and gray technocracy uniforms would assay each nation's yearly energy output, then divide it fairly among the citizenry. Of course, unquote. Of course they're going to be fair, right? Goods and services could be purchased at prices set out, quote, on a table of energy equivalents calculated by objective technocratic savants, unquote. All led by the great engineer, quote, unquote. Man, and that's by man, I don't know who that is. Like, without first names, I'm sorry, that doesn't even ring a bell. While originally based on energy calculations by scientists at Columbia University, the technocracy dogma was written by, quote, a charismatic Greenwich Village layabout named Howard Scott, unquote. Scott, who dismissed the world's business people, quote, dismissed the world's business people, social scientists, lawyers, and teachers as charlatans, unquote, was the longtime director-in-chief of Technocracy Incorporated. Its program was essentially a techno-autocracy with a self-perpetuating elite, overt hostility to aliens and Asiatics, and a wide range of fascist trappings. Okay, where does that quote start? Unquote. I mean, all of this is in quotes, so just remember that. I don't want to, there's too many. By the outset of World War II, the popularity of the technocracy movement had declined substantially, but it continued to be active in July 1940. As war raged in Europe while America had not engaged, Scott published the organization's position. America, quote, America, now and forever, unquote, in the official magazine of Technocracy Incorporated, consistent with the movement's isolationist policy, it proposed a dramatic increase in the nation's continental defense. Among other things, the government was to greatly increase the size of the military, quote, unquote, conscript all-American means of transportation, communication systems, public utilities, manufacturing industries, mixing enterprises and patents, close all bars, abolish all foreign language periodicals, advertising, radio programs and organizations, and prohibit outgoing transfers of currency. Along with these proposed steps, Scott wrote that the territory of the United States must be expanded in order to defend it properly. Of course, bigger is better and easier to control. The new technate of America was to include all of Canada, Greenland, Central America, the Caribbean, and parts of Colombia, Venezuela, and the Guyanas. Defense bases were to be established around the perimeter as far afield as Attu, Pago Pago, the Galapagos, Georgetown, Guyana, Bermuda, St. John's, Newfoundland, Cape Farewell, and Greenland. In Scott's words, on the map accompanying this issue is delineated the geographical territory required for the adequate defense and operation of this continental area. Of course, we need it to be adequate for our special forces. We should immediately acknowledge our planned intentions of consolidating these territories, not as separate political entities, but as part of the continent of North America. America must possess all North American territories on the accompanying map of the technate for the defense of this continent. How to achieve this monumental consolidation? The government of the United States should take immediate action to acquire these territories and others, such as Greenland and the Galapagos Islands. The acquisition of these territories should be a mandatory part of the program of continental defense for immediate achievement, either by purchase, negotiation, or the force of arms. Okay. Yeah, like crusades. The success of the New Deal had already reduced the attractiveness of technocracy's economic and political proposals at the time this map was published. And the attack on Pearl Harbor ended support for the isolation of the United States. Nothing has ended in regards to this technocracy. It has only gained momentum. Just look around you. Just take a look around you. Let's just quickly go into the next and probably the last segment, which is we're just gonna dive right into where the current state of this technocracy movement is and how it's currently fathered by Elon Musk. He's the driving force behind the influence and weaponization of our government and information in general on the internet. I believe is just being used against us. So let's just dive into this and see what it is that is the driving force behind this quick thrust into an authoritarian world government. So I'm going to look at Elon Musk, and this is on his Patreon, or this is on Patreon, but it's actually, no, it's not his, it's Hidden Amaraka, Thrice Greatest. So I really appreciate this bit of information. It aligns with everything I've been diving into for a while now, about the last 5 years. So let's see. So chapter 1, Elon's upbringing. What is technocracy? Meet Elon's grandfather, Joshua Haldeman. It's the head of Canada's technocracy movement. And let's just look at these pictures here. Elon Musk's grandfather was head of Canada's technocracy movement, Dr. Joshua Haldeman, with his wife Winifred. And let's move over here to this section here. This is a must-read story. TN has identified Elon Musk as a technocrat on the basis of beliefs and actions. Obviously, what we did not know is that his Canadian grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, was an avid supporter of technocracy, served as research director, and ultimately became the head of the Technocracy Incorporated Party in Canada. For full details on modern technocracy, the reader is advised to read Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. Also, I'd like to add to that Joshua Haldeman was also a Nazi and was involved in Project Paperclip as one of the scientists that was sent over here to infiltrate our U.S. government in the 1930s. I think it was earlier than that. Around that time. Anyway, we're not going to say too much more about that, so let's just move on. Technocracy is a government or control of society or industry by an elite of technical experts. Failure in the war on poverty discredited technocracy, quote unquote. An instance or application of technocracy, an elite of technical experts. I was going to read this on MK Ultra and the CIA, but I think I'm just going to call it good. It's been a really long video, and I don't think I'm going to read this, but if you really want me to, comment below and I'll do that in the next video. Otherwise, we're just going to leave it there, and I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that you got something out of it, and let me know what you think. If you think that we are under this spell of mind control on our social media, and I personally think that MK Ultra is still going, and that's the form that it took on was a mind control through social media. Anyway, I do hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.